March 24, 1928, Moscow. A former merchant's mansion on Bolshaya Yakimanka. In a spacious study, two men lie on parallel couches, 54-year-old institute director Alexander Bogdanov and 21-year-old student Lazar Koldomasov. Their veins are connected by rubber tubes fitted with a glass cannula, a special adapter for blood vessels. Blood flows directly from one body into the other. The doctor is convinced he's draining away old age and transfusing youth. What he doesn't yet know is that he's just set the countdown to his own death in motion. The man on the couch is no lone mad scientist experimenter. Alexander Bogdanov was a trained physician, an economist, a former member of the party Central Committee, and a personal friend of writer Maxim Gorky. His research was so highly regarded that in 1926, by direct order of Joseph Stalin, the State Scientific Institute for Blood Transfusion was established specifically for his work. 14 days after this procedure, the institute's director would be dead. But we're telling this story not to point at some tragic mistake of the past. What matters here is understanding how an educated doctor, fully aware of the dangers, step by step walked himself toward a procedure that defied every biological law. This story explains why today, before any medical intervention, we sign an informed consent form. You'll see how a science fiction novel about life on Mars convinced Soviet leadership to fund a secret laboratory. We'll dig through the archival records of the 11th experiment and find out why Bogdanov ignored the incompatibility reaction in his partner. And you'll learn what the dying scientist wrote in his final clinical protocol. If you're watching this and realize just how costly each step toward medical safety truly was, hit like. It helps investigations like this find their audience. But to understand why an experienced clinician bet his life on a theory of mutual blood exchange, we have to go back to 1908. The Italian island of Capri. In a remote villa, a project for creating a new kind of human is being discussed. Alexander Malinovsky, the man history would remember under the pen name Bogdanov, received his medical degree in 1899. He graduated from the medical faculty of Kharkov University and began practicing psychiatry. But classical medicine felt far too narrow for him. Bogdanov became obsessed with the idea of reshaping not just society, but human nature itself. In 1908, while in political exile on the Italian island of Capri, he writes a science fiction novel, Red Star. In the book, he describes a highly advanced society of Martians. The key to their longevity and equality, he declares, is the regular exchange of blood between the young and the old. Literary fiction quickly became scientific doctrine for the doctor. Bogdanov formulated his theory of physiological collectivism. In his conception, blood wasn't just a carrier of oxygen, it was a liquid organ, storing the body's biological experience. By transfusing blood from a young person to an elderly one, you could transfer rejuvenating proteins and enzymes. And the older person, giving their own blood in return, would pass protective immune proteins, antibodies, to the young. At the dawn of the 20th century, this idea seemed perfectly logical, but it completely ignored the laws of genetics. Medicine at the time had no concept of individual tissue compatibility. Karl Landsteiner had discovered blood groups back in 1901, yet his finding was only considered useful for emergency surgery. Bogdanov, however, saw blood as a kind of social glue, something that could physically unite the proletariat. In 1924, he began his experiments under makeshift conditions. Right in his own apartment, Bogdanov performed the first secret mutual blood transfusions. His family members served as his partners. His wife, Olga Bogdanova, endured the sessions poorly. She regularly suffered from fevers and joint pain. The researcher viewed these symptoms as a beneficial restructuring of the body. Bogdanov subjected himself to 10 such procedures. He assured his colleagues that his eyesight had improved and that dark hair was growing in place of his gray. Subjective enthusiasm completely displaced medical caution. At the end of 1925, the scientist decided to scale up his experiments, which meant he needed the resources of the entire country and the personal approval of the Kremlin's top leadership. In December 1925, Bogdanov's initiative reached the Council of People's Commissars of the USSR. The authorities showed genuine interest in the project. Aging party leaders were looking for ways to preserve their health and prolong their political careers. A personal meeting between Bogdanov and Joseph Stalin decided the fate of the research laboratory. The scientist was granted a substantial budget and a building. In May 1926, Moscow saw the opening of the world's first specialized institution, the State Scientific Institute of Blood Transfusion. The former merchant mansion of Igumnov on Bolshaya Yakimanka Street was handed over for its needs. Bogdanov became the institute's first director. The new institution was supposed to put blood exchange on an assembly line. Over 2 years of work, the staff carried out hundreds of hemotransfusion procedures. Bogdanov personally oversaw the key research. He continued to use his own body as a testing ground. By the start of 1928, the director had already undergone 10 successful procedures. He published enthusiastic reports, noting surges of energy and improved memory. Some party officials who received treatment within the mansion's walls echoed his claims. But unease was growing inside the team. The institute's clinical assistant, Vladimir Shamov, insisted on testing for possible hidden reactions. Shamov pointed to the risk of repeated exposure to foreign protein. It could trigger sensitization, a gradual buildup of aggressive antibodies in the blood targeting the donor's cells. But Bogdanov waved off his colleagues' objections. He believed that a matching blood group guaranteed biological safety. For his 11th experiment, the scientist chose a partner with compromised health. This was meant to prove that his method was stronger than any underlying infection. On March 24, 1928, everything was ready for the experiment in the institute director's office. Bogdanov's partner was a 21-year-old Moscow State University student named Lazar Koldomosov. The young man suffered from an inactive form of pulmonary tuberculosis and had previously survived malaria. Bogdanov chose him deliberately. The scientist intended to prove several theories. He believed that the young man's blood could trigger rejuvenation despite his chronic illnesses. The director's own blood, rich in antibodies, was supposed to strengthen the student's immune system. Before the procedure began, assistants ran a quick compatibility test using the methods available at the time. Bogdanov's and Koldomosov's blood belonged to the same group, the first, or Group O. In the early 20th century, that would have been considered sufficient, but the medicine of those years knew nothing yet about the Rh factor. The procedure started in the afternoon. It was done by direct transfusion, with the veins connected straight through glass adapters. The exchange volume was enormous. Each participant was supposed to receive 1,000 milliliters of the other's blood. That amounted to nearly 1/5 of the total blood volume of an adult human. At first, everything went according to plan. But at the 800 milliliter mark, Bogdanov began to feel slightly unwell. He ordered the process stopped, and the doctors withdrew the needles from their veins. 3 hours later, both participants began experiencing an incompatibility reaction of erythrocytes, red blood cells. Bogdanov's body responded to the foreign proteins with an aggressive immune attack. On the morning of March 25, 1928, both participants were in critical condition. Their symptoms developed in parallel. They registered chills, a sharp spike in temperature up to 40 degrees, and darkening of the urine. That last sign indicated massive destruction of blood cells. Lazar Koldomosov's young body managed to handle the strain. Within a few days, his kidneys resumed filtering, and the student began to recover. For 54-year-old Alexander Bogdanov, the outcome was different. His body, worn down by 10 previous transfusions, simply had no resources left for recovery. The institute director's decline lasted 14 days. He developed acute renal failure, the shutdown of the kidney filters. Toxic nitrogenous waste began building up in his body, causing uremia. This led to severe self-poisoning of his tissues. Bogdanov remained clear-headed until his very last hour. He categorically forbade doctors from performing any standard therapeutic procedures on him. Instead, he demanded that the attending physicians keep a detailed log of his decline. On April 7, 1928, Alexander Bogdanov died. So what do you think? Who was Alexander Bogdanov? An overconfident utopian who disregarded safety, or a sincere scientist who sacrificed himself for science? Share your opinion in the comments. We'll come back to it in the finale. The director's death shook the medical community of the capital. An investigation was required to establish the causes of the catastrophe. The answers were to be found on the autopsy table. Here's a detail that shatters the old assumptions about what caused this tragedy. On April 9, 1928, the distinguished Soviet pathologist Alexey Ivanovich Abrikosov performed an autopsy on Bogdanov's body. The results were unambiguous. Death had occurred due to kidney failure caused by intravascular hemolysis, the destruction of red blood cells. Bogdanov's case revealed massive necrosis of the renal tubules. His kidney filters were literally clogged with free hemoglobin released from destroyed red blood cells. But why did this happen if Bogdanov's and Koldomosov's blood types matched perfectly? Modern immunology wouldn't get the answer to that question until decades later. In 1928, medicine relied solely on Karl Landsteiner's system of 4 blood groups. The Rh factor, a specific protein on the surface of red blood cells, wasn't discovered until 1940. Bogdanov, through his frequent self-transfusions, had unknowingly triggered a process of sensitization. Every new transfusion from a different donor flooded his body with foreign proteins. His immune system responded by producing aggressive antibodies against them. By the 11th procedure, the level of these antibodies in Bogdanov's blood had reached a critical threshold. The blood of the student Koldomosov, carrying incompatible protein markers, served as the detonator. What followed was a rapid chain reaction of cell clumping and destruction. The released plasma blocked his excretory system. Bogdanov's theory that matching blood groups guaranteed safety was completely disproven. But in the press of those years, right after the scientist's funeral, different versions of what happened began to circulate. Many of his colleagues couldn't believe that an experienced physician had made such an obvious mistake. One theory, widely discussed in Moscow in the spring of 1928, held that Bogdanov's death was no accident. Proponents of this hypothesis claimed the scientist had committed a veiled suicide. By that point, he had found himself in deep political and philosophical isolation. His old disagreements with Vladimir Lenin and the mounting pressure from Joseph Stalin had stripped Bogdanov of any prospects. Running the institute he had founded remained the only thing left in his life. Critics pointed to his choice of Koldomosov, a student suffering from tuberculosis and malaria, as the donor, calling it a deliberate step towards self-destruction. Yet documentary evidence refutes this version. The clinical diaries Bogdanov kept during his final days were written in the dry, detached language of a researcher. The scientist described in detail the progression of his uremia, blood poisoning by nitrogenous waste. He meticulously recorded his pulse dynamics, the symptoms of nervous system damage, and his failing vision. Bogdanov genuinely hoped his body would pull through and that his detailed notes would serve science. This behavior completely rules out any intent to end his own life. Bogdanov's death was a tragedy born of sincere faith in an untested theory. But it was precisely this death that forced the state to completely overhaul its approach to donor blood. In 1930, 2 years after the tragedy, the State Scientific Institute of Blood Transfusion came under the leadership of pathophysiologist Alexander Bogomolets. Under his direction, the institution was thoroughly reorganized. Exchange transfusion experiments were officially banned by the People's Commissariat of Health. The institute shifted its focus to solving practical clinical problems. Scientists concentrated on developing methods for preserving blood using sodium citrate for long-term storage. New rules were introduced requiring blood type to be determined twice for both donor and recipient immediately before the procedure. The biological test became mandatory. It's a method of slowly introducing small doses of blood to check the body's reaction right at the patient's bedside. The founder's death accelerated the creation of a safe blood supply system, one that would go on to save millions of lives during World War II. In the next episode, we'll tell the story of William Coley, an American surgeon. Back in the 19th century, he injected patients with deadly bacteria to fight cancer and accidentally laid the groundwork for modern immunotherapy. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Today, the former Igumnov mansion on Bolshaya Yakimanka no longer belongs to doctors, but its walls still remember a great delusion. Every time a nurse in the lab mixes a drop of your blood with a reagent on a white plate, you're going through a safety protocol. That protocol was written at the cost of Alexander Bogdanov's life. Medicine advanced through the mistakes of those who believed the laws of nature could be bypassed with a beautiful theory. But nature always demands an exact accounting.